Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at the Ashtavakra Gita, and specifically Osho's commentary on it. We'll be focusing on self-realization and the concept of illusion.
And it's interesting how Osho compares the Ashtavakra Gita with the well-known Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, right, the one by Krishna.
Yeah, exactly. Krishna's Gita seems to lay out all these different paths you can take to reach enlightenment, kind of like a spiritual buffet.
But Ashtavakra is a bit more my way or the highway.
Exactly. Ashtavakra demands you surrender completely, let go of your ego and any preconceived notions you might have.
You mean like any personal interpretations of the text?
Yeah, that's probably why Osho points out that there are barely any commentaries written about the Ashtavakra Gita. There's just no room for that.
Makes sense. There's just this raw truth laid out.
Right.
So there's that idea of illusion that Osho brings up, and he uses the image of the horizon, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, yeah. That's a really clever analogy.
It is. It's this line where the sky meets the earth, but it doesn't actually exist, right?
Right. It's an illusion that our perception creates. And not just in the physical world, but in our internal world as well.
Oh, you mean like the way we perceive ourselves as separate,
Yeah.
like from each other or even from...
Exactly. Even from the divine.
So that separation is an illusion too.
Precisely.
Mm.
And Osho has this great example he uses to explain this about mixing milk and water.
Okay.
They blend together perfectly because they have similar qualities. You know, they're both kind of earthly.
Right.
But our true self or being can't really ever merge with our physical bodies, even though they're so close. And that's because at their core, their basic nature is different.
Huh. That's an interesting way to put it. So it's like trying to mix oil and water.
Yeah, exactly. They always separate.
So if that separation we feel is an illusion, how do we break free from it? How do we see through it?
Well, Ashtavakra tells us that the ego is the culprit.
Okay, the ego.
It's the ego with its constant striving, for worthiness and with all its desires that keeps us trapped in this illusion of separation. It makes us believe we need certain things to be happy.
Oh, I see. Like that we need to achieve certain things
Yeah.
or be a certain way.
Yeah,
Like we're always striving for something, never really content with where we are or who we are even.
exactly. And that striving prevents us from experiencing the present moment, from
Yeah.
seeing that peace and wholeness that already exists.
Right. Because we're so focused on the future or the past.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of beliefs, Osho shares those really amazing stories that show us just how much our beliefs can shape our reality.
Wow.
Like people walking on fire,
Mhm.
or that story of the emperor's son.
Right. The one who forgets who he is.
Yes. Imagine forgetting who you are for 20 years, living as a beggar, just because you don't remember that you're actually a prince.
It really shows you the power of belief.
Yeah.
Even about ourselves.
Really makes you wonder what kind of beliefs we're all carrying around. Ones that maybe are holding us back.
Yeah.
And what about that story Osho tells about the man who was convinced he had a police file?
Oh, yeah. Bolaram.
Yeah.
It's wild, right? It shows you how powerful belief can be, even when it's completely false.
It really does. And the lengths they had to go to convince him otherwise,
It's incredible, isn't it?
it's like something straight out of a movie. So if our beliefs have such a strong impact on us, how can we even begin to shift them? Like, how do we become aware of them in the first place?
Right. That's where the idea of witnessing comes in.
Witnessing.
Yeah. Ashtavakra talks about the difference between being a spectator versus being a witness.
Okay. So what's the difference?
Well, imagine you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
A spectator is someone who gets totally engrossed, right? They identify with the characters, with the storyline, they get swept up in the emotions of it all.
Right.
But the witness, they just observe,
Oh.
they see the images on the screen, but don't get attached to them. They don't get emotionally invested.
Are you saying we should just be detached from life? Like we're just watching it all happen?
Well, not detached. It's more about awareness. Being present, but not letting our thoughts and emotions run the show completely.
Oh, okay, I see. It's interesting because that ties into that idea of the ego as the root of suffering. Like we identify so much with our thoughts and emotions that we get trapped in that cycle.
Exactly. By developing this witness consciousness, we can observe those thoughts and emotions without judging them, seeing them as temporary, not our identity.
And that's how we start to loosen the grip of the ego.
Exactly. And that's where we start to experience a deeper sense of peace.
That's amazing. So how do we develop this witness consciousness?
Well, Ashtavakra suggests meditation,
Right.
which can definitely help cultivate that stillness and clarity, to observe without getting carried away. But Osho has an interesting twist on this, too.
Well, that.
Osho says that while meditation is a helpful tool, ultimately, witnessing has to go beyond just our formal practice.
Hmm.
It should be part of our daily lives. So we're experiencing presence and awareness no matter what we're doing.
Okay, so it's not just sitting on a cushion for 20 minutes. It's about bringing that same awareness to daily activities.
Yeah, like washing the dishes, having a conversation, anything really.
That reminds me of mindfulness,
Yeah.
like being present in each moment.
Exactly. It's very similar. Bringing that same attentiveness and non-judgmental observation to every aspect of your life.
You know what's interesting? Thinking about this idea of the ego always striving. Osho talks about the language used by people in power versus people who aren't in power.
Right.
He says those in political office often focus on law and order, while those out of power talk about revolution.
Right.
And it seems like that reflects our ego's desire for control, doesn't it?
It totally does. It really struck me when I read that too. Like, our perception really is shaped by whether we feel in control or not.
It really is. And it makes you think about how much that need to feel in control is driving our perceptions, and how that pursuit of control is maybe keeping us stuck in that cycle of suffering.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really great point. And it leads to Osho's emphasis on surrender. Letting go of that need to control everything.
Which, of course, is really difficult.
Very difficult.
So this brings us to a very important concept, samadhi.
Right.
And Osho describes it as pure awareness and bliss.
Mm.
But it comes not from striving, but from dissolving the ego and its desires.
Yes. Like saying to reach your destination, you have to stop running.
Wow, that's a powerful image. So it's a state of being that arises when we stop trying so hard.
Yeah, when we stop seeking and just be. It's paradoxical, but incredibly powerful.
It is. It's like we already have everything we need, but we're too busy looking for it to notice.
That's a great way to put it.
And Osho uses Buddha's Enlightenment story to illustrate this point.
Right. After years of intense effort.
Years.
He achieves enlightenment when he finally gives up, surrenders.
So it's not about adding something new, but letting go of everything that's in the way.
Exactly. And letting go of our ideas of what enlightenment should look like, how it should feel, when it should happen, just trusting the process.
Surrendering to the unknown.
Yes.
I love that. It's like removing clouds to reveal the sun.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And speaking of things that can cloud our vision, Osho also talks about suppressing our emotions, specifically tears.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He even says, and I love this quote, "Those who let tears flow are fortunate, they are strong."
Ow.
So what's he getting at there? Why are tears so important?
Well, he's highlighting the importance of vulnerability, allowing ourselves to feel deeply, to connect with our hearts. For Osho, tears aren't a weakness. They're a sign of strength and authenticity.
So instead of keeping a stiff upper lip, as they say, Osho is saying that true strength comes from embracing our vulnerability.
Exactly. And when we suppress our emotions, particularly sadness and grief, we risk creating this very dry intellectual spirituality.
It's like experiencing life from behind a window instead of actually being out in the world.
Exactly.
So how do we bring this emotional vulnerability into our spiritual practice? How does meditation fit into this?
Well, Osho explains that they actually go hand in hand. Meditation can be a way to experience witnessing.
Yeah.
It's a tool, for quieting the mind, for creating that space for observation. But he takes it a step further.
Oh,
He says that witnessing can eventually go beyond even meditation itself.
wow. What does he mean by that? How can witnessing surpass meditation?
It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you need those training wheels.
Okay.
In this case, that's formal meditation, but then you gain enough balance and you don't need them anymore. So witnessing becomes your natural state.
I see. So it's not just something you do for a set period of time, it's just who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
That's incredible. And this is where Ashtavakra's teaching on the 6 waves comes into play, right?
Right.
The 6 waves of existence: sound, touch, form, taste, smell, and thoughts.
Yes. Even our thoughts.
He's saying that thoughts are like waves.
Exactly. It's all that sensory experience we have, all that flux. But our true self, the observer, lies beyond those waves.
Wow. So it's like watching waves crashing on the shore. The waves keep changing, but the shore remains the same.
That's a perfect analogy. We're not our thoughts, sensations, or even experiences. We're the awareness that's witnessing it all.
Like we're the sky, and the thoughts are just clouds passing through.
Exactly. That's a beautiful way to put it.
And I know that Osho connects this to Buddha's teachings about watching the breath.
Yes. Because by focusing on the breath, especially the gaps between breaths, we can glimpse the observer, the awareness that's beyond those thoughts and sensations.
That makes so much sense. It's like we're training ourselves to be aware of the spaces between thoughts, that stillness.
Exactly. And this leads us to Ashtavakра's final point, the idea of becoming a blank slate, like a piece of paper that's ready for anything.
So it's not about filling our minds with knowledge or beliefs even, but emptying ourselves so that truth can just naturally arise.
Yeah. He uses the metaphor of cleaning a mirror.
So we can see clearly.
Exactly. Removing all the smudges, all the dust, those preconceived notions, the judgments that cloud our perception.
So it's about creating that inner emptiness.
Yes, that receptivity, so the divine can manifest in its own way.
Wow. This really is making me think about enlightenment in a whole new way.
It really is a different perspective, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like turning everything I thought I knew upside down.
It is.
Well, this has been an incredible start to our deep dive. I already feel like my perspective is shifting.
That's great to hear. And it's amazing how the Ashtavakra Gita really challenges us to rethink how we understand enlightenment. It's less about, striving for something in the future and more about recognizing the truth that's already here in this moment.
Right here, right now.
Exactly. And this is where that contrast between Krishna's approach and Ashtavakara's approach really comes into play. Krishna offers all these different paths, right? Bhakti, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga.
Like a spiritual buffet.
Yeah, exactly. And each requires a certain amount of effort and discipline to get to the goal.
It's like choosing a workout plan depending on your fitness level.
Right, exactly. But Ashtavakra just says, drop all the plans, let go of that striving, and just see what already is.
So it's more about like stripping away those layers.
Yeah.
The conditioning, the beliefs, the desires that are blocking our true nature. It's like cleaning a really old painting and revealing the masterpiece underneath.
That's a great analogy. I love that. We get so caught up in chasing external things, right? Achievements, possessions, relationships.
Yeah.
And we forget that the real source of fulfillment is actually already inside us.
It's like that story Osho shares about the emperor's son, the one who forgets his royal identity and lives as a beggar for years.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only when someone reminds him of who he truly is that he steps back into his power. It's like such a powerful image for how we get so lost in this illusion of lack.
Yeah, such a great story. And it speaks directly to that point, We all have this amazing potential inside us, but we forget, and then we start chasing after these things that ultimately leave us feeling empty.
Right. And sometimes, as Osho points out, we even create our own illusions based on our beliefs, even when those beliefs are completely unfounded.
Oh, like Polarim.
Yes. Holram, who was convinced that he had this police file.
It's such a great example of the power of the mind. Our beliefs can literally create our reality, even if that reality is made up.
Exactly. It makes you wonder what else we're believing that might not even be true. What other limitations are we putting on ourselves?
Such a great question. And it really brings us back to cultivating that witness consciousness that we were talking about before.
Right, that ability to observe our thoughts and emotions without getting totally swept away by them.
Exactly. It's like taking a step back and seeing the bigger picture, recognizing that we are not those thoughts, but we are the awareness that's observing them.
And Osho suggests that meditation can help us cultivate that ability, right?
Meditation's a great tool, yeah. It allows us to quiet the mind and create space to just observe.
But it's not just limited to our meditation practice, is it?
Right. Osho says that witnessing shouldn't be limited to just when we're sitting on the cushion. It needs to extend into our daily lives.
So bringing that same awareness to everything we do.
Exactly. Whether you're having a conversation or cooking dinner or just walking down the street.
So just noticing our thoughts and emotions and sensations without judgment.
Without judgment or attachment, just observing them like clouds passing through the sky.
And by doing that, by becoming the observer, we can start to recognize that those thoughts and emotions aren't who we are.
Exactly. We are the awareness that's witnessing them.
And this brings us to Ashtavakara's teaching on the 6 waves, right?
Oh, yes. The 6 waves of existence.
Sound, touch, form, taste, smell,
Yeah.
and thought.
Yes, even thought.
It's interesting that he includes thought as one of the waves.
Well, he's emphasizing that thoughts aren't permanent. They're not solid. They're just like waves on the surface of the ocean. They rise and they fall. They're constantly changing.
And our true self is like the depths of the ocean, undisturbed by all of that movement on the surface.
That's a beautiful way to put it. We're not our thoughts, our sensations, or even our experiences. We're the awareness that's witnessing it all.
This reminds me of Buddha's teachings about watching the breath.
Oh, yeah.
By focusing on the breath, we become aware of the flow of life energy that's moving through us.
Right.
And then in the gaps between the breaths, we can start to see that observer, the awareness that's beyond the thoughts and sensations.
It's such a powerful practice, and it's something we can do anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
Just by bringing our attention to the breath, we can connect with that deeper sense of awareness.
That stillness within us.
Exactly.
Like all these different teachings are pointing to the same truth. It's just expressed in different ways.
That's what makes exploring these teachings so fascinating.
And that brings us back to Osho's unique take on samadhi.
Right.
He describes it as a state of pure awareness and bliss.
Yes.
But he emphasizes that it's not something we achieve through effort or striving.
It's not about trying to force ourselves into a certain state.
Right.
It's about letting go of all that effort, all that seeking.
And just being present.
Yeah, resting in what is.
I love that analogy he uses about removing clouds to reveal the sun that was always shining.
Right. It's such a powerful image.
It reminds us that enlightenment isn't something we need to go out and search for. It's already here.
It's about recognizing what's already within us.
And it reminds me of Buddha's journey toward enlightenment.
Yes.
After years of intense striving and discipline, he finally achieved enlightenment when he surrendered.
When he let go of all that effort.
It's such a beautiful illustration of the paradox.
True realization comes when we stop trying to force things, when we let go of our attachment to a specific outcome and just surrender to the present moment.
And that idea of surrender can be really challenging.
Especially in a culture that emphasizes achieving and doing.
Right.
But surrender isn't about weakness.
Right.
It's about aligning ourselves with a power that's greater than us.
Trusting the wisdom of the universe.
Yeah.
Let go and let God.
Exactly. And this leads us to another teaching from Osho about the importance of tears.
Right.
He says, those who let tears flow are fortunate. They are strong.
It's a very different perspective on vulnerability.
Right. We're often told to toughen up, to hide our tears.
Yeah, like it's a weakness.
But Osho suggests that suppressing our emotions, especially sadness and grief, can actually lead to a spiritual life that's dry and intellectual.
It's like we're trying to experience the world without really feeling it.
It's in those moments of vulnerability when we allow ourselves to feel deeply that we really connect with our hearts.
So we need to allow ourselves to feel the full range of human emotion.
Yes, even the ones that make us uncomfortable.
Because that's how we stay connected to who we are.
Exactly.
So how do we balance that emotional vulnerability with the practice of detachment and witnessing? How does meditation fit into all of this?
Well, it's about finding that balance. Meditation helps us to cultivate the stillness and awareness that we need to just observe our emotions, without judgment and without getting swept away by them.
But we don't want to suppress those emotions.
We have to honor them, allow ourselves to feel them fully.
So it's about holding both of those things at the same time.
Exactly.
And that's where that idea of witnessing as something that extends beyond our formal meditation practice comes in.
Right, exactly. It's about bringing that same level of awareness to every aspect of our lives.
So we become the observer in every situation.
Noticing our thoughts and emotions and our reactions without getting lost in them.
And remembering that even our thoughts are just passing phenomena.
Like those waves on the ocean.
Yeah.
When we recognize that we are not our thoughts, we gain a sense of freedom.
A sense of spaciousness.
Yes.
And that allows us to experience that deep sense of peace and presence no matter what's happening around us.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? To experience that inner peace and freedom regardless of our external circumstances.
Absolutely. And it all starts with cultivating that awareness, with learning to witness the play of life without getting lost in the drama.
And as we practice witnessing, we chip away at that illusion of separation. That illusion that keeps us from seeing who we truly are.
And this brings us to something really interesting that Osho says about scriptures.
Okay.
He talks about how they can be interpreted in so many different ways. He compares them to blank pieces of paper.
It's a great point. He's reminding us that the scriptures aren't the truth itself. They're just pointers.
Right. They can be helpful guides, but true understanding comes from our own direct experience.
Exactly. And Osho emphasizes that true understanding comes from inner emptiness. From becoming like a blank slate ourselves.
It's like cleaning that mirror again, right?
Yes. Removing all the smudges and the dust, all the preconceived notions and judgments, and then our minds become these clear, reflective surfaces.
So we can perceive truth directly.
Exactly. So it's really about letting go of all of our fixed ideas about who we are, what the world is, even what enlightenment should look like.
It's about creating a space of openness and receptivity so that the divine can manifest in its own way.
Yeah, beautifully said.
This deep dive is really challenging me to rethink everything I thought I knew about spirituality.
That's great. It's about questioning everything and shedding those old ideas and seeing the world in a whole new way.
This reminds me of another point Osho made about the language used by people in power versus those who aren't in power.
Oh,
He
right.
points out that those in political office tend to talk about law and order, while those who are out of power tend to talk about revolution.
Right, yes. It's such a subtle observation.
But it's so profound, right? It shows how our ego's desire for control really shapes how we see things and even the words we use.
Exactly. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like how much of our suffering stems from that need to be in control.
From feeling like we're separate and in charge.
Yes, exactly. And both Ashtavakra and Osho are pointing us towards the same realization.
Which is
That true freedom comes from letting go.
letting go of control.
Yes, surrendering to what is,
And that's not an easy thing to do.
especially in a culture that tells us to strive and achieve and conquer.
Right.
But it's a radical shift in perspective. And the more we explore these teachings, the more we can see how liberating it truly is.
Moving from a state of fear and lack to a state of trust and abundance.
Yes, from separation to connection.
And that's ultimately what the Ashtavakra Gita is pointing us towards.
That realization of our true nature, of our oneness.
Oneness with the divine.
Exactly. And it's not some far-off goal. It's available to us right now.
So it's not about becoming enlightened.
It's about realizing that we already are.
That's a radical teaching.
It's the most radical and liberating teaching of all.
Wow, we've really been through a lot in this deep dive, haven't we? We've talked about Krishna and Ashtavakra and illusion, belief, witnessing, the ego, and samadhi. Even tears.
Oh, and meditation and those 6 waves, remember?
And becoming a blank slate. It's a lot to process.
It is, but through it all, it seems like this one idea keeps coming up, that enlightenment isn't about adding something to ourselves. It's about taking away the layers and recognizing the truth that's already there inside us.
It's like we've been carrying this precious jewel around this whole time, but we didn't even know it.
Exactly. We're so busy chasing after those shiny trinkets, the achievements and possessions.
Relationships.
Yes. But the Ashtavakra Gita and Osho's commentary on it, they keep pointing us back to what really matters, to that infinite potential we have within us.
And it's so empowering, isn't it? Because if it's already inside us, that means it's accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about seeing who we already are.
So how do we take all this amazing insight and apply it to our daily lives? How do we shift from seeking to just being?
Well, a really important practice, and one that both Ashtavakra and Osho talk about, is meditation.
Right.
It helps us quiet the mind, create space for observation without judgment. It helps us cultivate that witness consciousness.
But like we said before, meditation is just the starting point, isn't it?
It is. Osho says that eventually, this witnessing, it needs to go beyond our formal practice on the cushion. It should be woven into everything we do.
So it's like bringing that awareness to every single moment.
Exactly. Washing the dishes, talking with a friend, just walking down the street, noticing what's happening without getting carried away by it.
It sounds like a lot of letting go,
Yeah,
a lot of surrender, which is easier said than done.
it really is. But here's the thing. It's in that letting go that we actually find real freedom.
Real fulfillment.
Yes. Osho compares it to a seed. You know how a seed has to surrender to the earth, let go of that hard shell in order to sprout and grow.
It's a beautiful image. So we have to kind of let go of our rigid beliefs, our need for control to reach our potential.
Yes. It's not about being passive, but it is about trusting that there's a power greater than us, that life is unfolding as it should.
Trusting the wisdom of the universe.
Exactly. Letting go and letting God, as they say.
And I remember Osho talking about seeing the divine in everything. Like it's not separate from us, but part of everything.
Oh, it's a beautiful concept. That interconnectedness, the sacredness of all life.
So it's not just about our own enlightenment, but about recognizing that spark in everyone and everything.
Exactly. Expanding our awareness, seeing the world with love and compassion.
I remember Osho used a mirror as an analogy for this.
Oh, right. He said the world reflects our own consciousness back to us.
So if we want to see beauty, we have to cultivate beauty within ourselves.
It all starts with us, by changing our perspective, choosing love over fear.
Which brings us back to that idea of being the witness.
Yes, observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment.
And as we do that, we start to free ourselves from those limitations the ego creates.
And when we let go of those limitations, we open up to new possibilities.
Osho talks about love being the most powerful force in the universe. And he says it's not just a feeling, but a state of being,
A way of being in the world. He compares it to the sun.
shining its light and warmth on everyone.
Exactly. So we radiate that love outward from the center of our being and let it touch everyone.
So what's the key takeaway for all of us listening? What can we do, starting right now, to move towards this enlightenment, towards liberation?
The most important thing is to remember that this is a journey, not a destination. There's no need to rush. Just take it one step at a time. Cultivate awareness, meditate, be that witness, surrender, see the divine in everything, and radiate love.
And enjoy the journey.
Yes, enjoy every single step.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. It's given me so much to think about, so much to explore.
I'm so glad to hear that. I hope it inspires you to look within and see the incredible potential you have.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of self-discovery.